Welcome to Parenting Successful Teens, the podcast that cuts through the overwhelm and stress of this phase and offers parents simple, practical, cognitive, science-based strategies for keeping their teens on track. Join Master Coach and real-life mom, Allie Irwin, to talk about real teens, real problems, and the skills it takes to raise successful adults.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to talk to you this week about the difference between conscientiousness and worrying. So many of my clients, when they come to me in our initial conversations, they believe that their worry is necessary. They believe that their worry is part of what makes them a good mom. Like they think their worry is helping them watch out and protect their family and provide opportunities for their kids. They think their worry is intricately intertwined with their good momness, even all the while they're suffering the negative effects of chronic stress. Okay, even though worrying feels terrible to them, they are definitely overeating and overdrinking and overshopping and over-Facebooking and not spending any time with their friends and waking up in the middle of the night, not sleeping and just kind of worrying all day long, like that chronic hum of anxiety. Are my kids okay? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Should I be checking Power School? That kind of chronic set of worry that is humming all day long while they're going about their life. Even though that feels terrible, they hesitate to give it up because they think that's part of what makes them a good mom. And so what I want to talk about today is separating out the conscientiousness, that desire to do a good job, that desire to take your obligations as a parent seriously. What I want to do today is to separate out the conscientiousness, the desire to do a good job as a mom, the part of you that takes being a good mom seriously. I want to separate that out from the worrying piece, which is actually working against you. And I'm going to explain physically what's happening in your brain when you worry and why it's having the exact opposite effect that you think it's having. So I'm pretty excited today. And I'm going to start by illustrating this idea with a story. So over the weekend, my husband and I are doing some vacation planning. We're going to take some fun fall trips. And I love traveling. We've traveled a ton in 2019. We got one of those Southwest companion passes this year. We got like a deal on a companion pass. And so all of our plane tickets have been buy one, get one free. And now that my own children are out of the house, like we're only buying 2 plane tickets, not 4. And now we're only buying 1 ticket, not 4. So we've had a lot more travel this year. In addition to the cost, the other thing that's changed for us in terms of travel is I've done a tremendous amount of work on my mind. I used to be a really chronic travel planning worrier. I didn't worry once we were traveling, but the process to get us on a trip was really painful for me. I especially not even just deciding where we were going to go or making the decision between the hotel downtown that's convenient but more expensive and the hotel farther out, or should we get an Airbnb so we can cook some meals? And is it even really a vacation if I'm still cooking? Once I got through all those and we'd planned a trip, then packing was my nemesis because my family would be just happy to throw 4 things in a suitcase and leave. And believe me, we've done some traveling now that they're adults. They're doing their own packing. They still do just throw 3 things in a suitcase and leave. But for me, as the mom, I felt this tremendous amount of pressure to have everything that anyone could possibly need. I had educational toys and books and crayons in case it rained and, any kind of emergency medications we would need and who needs a Band-Aid and what if someone has a splinter, and on my brain went. And it got to the point where I almost didn't want to go on trips because the preparing for them was so stressful to me. Now that I'm so much better at managing my mind and I've been applying all these tools lately, like I feel sympathy for that version of myself that really nearly missed out on a lot of things because she worried so much while she was getting ready for them. Worrying like that really boiled down to two thoughts. I wanted to have everything that I needed because I thought if I didn't have what we needed, it would be a problem. It would be a problem for my family. Like I would have somehow let them down if someone needed a Band-Aid and I didn't have one. And I also didn't want to have anything that we didn't need because I didn't want to burden us with taking a steamer trunk to go to the shore for the weekend. It was like this Price is Right game where I wanted to be close enough without going over. And it would be one thing if that was just how I approached travel, but it wasn't just how I approached travel. It was how I approached parenting. I always had this idea, like with kids' activities, that I wanted them to have everything that they needed. So they knew if they liked clarinet versus piano versus guitar. And I wanted them to try out all the different sports. Did they like soccer or basketball or track? And maybe they'd like a language, or maybe, we were super involved in our church, and did they want to try Boy Scouts and like all of the different things when they were little. But I also didn't want them to be overscheduled, right? I saw some of their friends like just went from activity to activity to activity, and you could tell those kids were tired and they almost like everything ran together, and they were always late and rushed for everything, and they never had all their equipment because, those poor parents were doing like 3 things with 3 kids all in the same night, every night. And I saw how much stress it created for those families, and I didn't want that either. And so that's an example, like packing, of where I wanted to get it like exactly right. Everything we needed and nothing we didn't need. As if like that perfect balance is even achievable. So the way I approached it with packing is I created this elaborate packing list for myself. And even after I had that elaborate packing list, I would still stress out and stay up late and try to think about all the what ifs. What if we need an umbrella? What if we do this? What if these new shoes aren't comfortable? Do we need workout shoes and like walking around shoes? Or am I even going to work out? I would run through all those scenarios. So even though I had this elaborate packing list that had hopefully everything that we needed on it, then I still did like all of these what if scenarios. And those 2 pieces really illustrate the difference between conscientiousness and worrying. Conscientiousness is having that packing list, having that list of things that I know we typically needed as a family, and wanting to do like a good and efficient job at getting us, packed and ready for a trip. Worrying is the perfectionism that came after the conscientiousness that wasn't useful. Worrying is all of those thoughts about how if we didn't have something that we needed, that it would be a problem and it would be my fault, right? Like that it would somehow ruin the vacation if I had forgotten to pack toothpaste. Instead of just it's a quick trip out to Walgreens to get toothpaste, or down to the front desk because now even hotels have toothpaste. Conscientiousness was a good and useful thing. And worrying was that perfectionism that happened after conscientiousness. And that isn't useful. Okay, that's the piece that made me not want to go on trips. That's the piece that made picking kids' activities feel so stressful. And, because this podcast is for teenagers, there's a million decisions, like not just picking activities, but curfew and cell phone usage and car privileges and who pays for the car and dating and how many AP classes and that sort of perfectionism. There are so many different areas that feel really important, that we can get into thinking that there's a right and perfect choice that we need to find, that we need to help our kids find. So now I want to talk about physically what's happening when you're worrying that is working against you making the best possible choice. Letting go of, for now, the idea that there is even a right and perfect choice, but even getting to like a good choice. So when you're worrying, what is happening in your brain is worrying is a thinking activity. We feel physically the effects of worry. And when people are talking about chronic stress and chronic anxiety, there is for sure a strong physical component to that, right? Like hypertension, weight gain, sleep loss, heart issues, on and on and on. Go the physical symptoms that come with chronic worry and chronic stress and chronic anxiety. But the worrying piece of it is primarily a thinking activity. In the literature, most anxiety diagnoses have a thinking piece, a feeling piece, and an action piece. Okay, and the worrying is the thinking piece of it. It's the thought that my kids will need something, we won't have it, and it will be a problem, and it will be my fault. I should have packed better. That's the worrying piece. And a lot of times when you're worrying, it kind of runs on a thought loop where it goes over and over and over. You should have thought you'd need an umbrella. Rained the last trip. I don't know why you didn't think about it. Last time we came to Washington, it was raining. Should have packed an umbrella. Now we're going to have to stop. Nobody wants to stop. We just need to get there. And on, like that thought loop goes. Okay, so worrying is happening in your prefrontal cortex. That's where thought happens. What I think is so cool about the time that we live in is scientists can literally see, doctors can literally see a thought happen in your brain. The fMRIs and EEGs, and then there's a new one, electrocardiography. I don't have the name right, but there's a new, even higher resolution than an fMRI that can really see the electrical activity moving in your brain when you're thinking a thought. Okay, so the thought's happening in your prefrontal cortex, and the other part of your brain that's involved is the anterior cruciate cingulate. And that ties the thinking part to the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain, the instincts. And this combination of the thinking piece tied to the limbic system, what that does is that's the part of your brain that can make a plan and evaluate the plan. That's the problem-solving part of your brain. And when you're worrying, you're using the problem-solving part of your brain to imagine a negative outcome. You're using the part of your brain that would be used to solve a problem to imagine something bad happening. And while you're doing that, this is a part that's super crazy. While you're doing that, you can't use that part of your brain to actually solve the problem. Like while you're thinking of the problem, it's like that phone line is busy. If you're listening to this podcast and you're old enough to remember phone lines that had a busy signal, this is your brain sends the problem solving to voicemail. You literally can't worry and think about a plan or evaluate the plan that you're thinking of at the same time. So while worrying feels necessary, it feels like it's bringing stuff into your consciousness, what it's actually doing is shutting it down. And because this process is happening in the limbic system, like it's a thought, I might forget something tied to an emotion like of disappointment or shame, fear, anxiety, any of those emotions, it's taking that thought. And because that worrying thought is tied to an emotion, it encodes in your brain like extra. It's like extra, it gives that thought extra fuel. It encodes in your brain more than it would if that thought didn't have any emotion tied behind it. So the particular circuitry of a worry makes it encode in your brain, and it makes it easier and easier to worry more. So when you're worrying, not only are you not problem solving in the current moment, but you're also diminishing your ability to problem solve and making it easy to worry about other things. And then, and this is a super crazy part, you're role modeling worrying for your children. So you think you're just being conscientious, right? That like by worrying about whether or not your kids need an umbrella on the trip, you're being conscientious. And that thought coming into your mind and you writing it down on your elaborate packing list is being conscientious. But then you continuing to try to think up scenarios that you might need to predict for in the future, that habit is not conscientious. That habit is worrying. And by worrying, you can't problem solve in the moment. And you're encoding in your circuitry. You're making it easier and easier to worry next time so you can't problem solve in the future. Then you're teaching your children not to be conscientious, but to be worriers. And so you're affecting their ability to solve their own problems. So if you want to know how to stop worrying, I want you to go back to episode 1 and re-listen to it because I go into way more detail in episode 1 about how to break the habit of worrying. But what I really wanted to do today was to really break apart the idea that worry is necessary, that worry is protecting your family, because what I've learned as I've done this thought work and as I've gotten more and more clear about how to manage my mind, how to stop the flow of unwanted thoughts in my brain, those worrying thoughts, like my whole life has opened up. And just with the travel example, like we've been able to do so many more fun weekend things because when I have a worrying thought, I know how to stop it. And that's what I want for you too. I want you to enjoy your family so much more. And all of that is waiting on the other side of worry. When I think about you and when I think about your families, like I don't want you to miss out on all the fun that's available to you during these years. Like I just don't want you to miss it because you're spending your time worrying. All right. And if you need help with this, definitely shoot me an email, parentingsuccessfulteens@gmail.com, and just put help in the subject line. You don't have to write anything else. And I will send you a scheduling link to my calendar and we'll hop on a call and we'll talk about what you need to do and how you can begin to break this cycle of worrying. Keep all your conscientiousness, but just let go of the part that's not serving you. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening to Parenting Successful Teens. If you enjoyed today's show, then I've got a treat for you. I have a free guide that teaches you how to get your teenagers to tell you about their day. No more one-word answers. And grabbing this guide is super easy. Just text the phrase, Get Teens Talking, as all one word, no spaces, to the number 44222. So that's the phrase, Get Teens Talking, without any spaces, to the number 44222. And then you'll be prompted to give the email address that you want the guide sent to, and then it shows up in your email box just like magic. You know what else is magic? Having teenagers that talk to you. Now, I can't promise that you're going to like everything they have to say, but I can promise better conversations. Grab the guide, and I'll talk to you next week.